you caught it when you did.
Yeah. Imagine we go half hour in and shit. It was just talk for us. Go ahead. Sorry. We're recording.
Welcome to the Liberty North Show, where we explore this global fifth generation warfare from a Canadian perspective. Today, we have Kristen Nagle on the show, and we are very excited to get into the particular madness of Canada, but of course, the madness that is going around the world and what it means to be fighting for health freedom, medical sovereignty. Welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Kristen, you are a nurse, right? And at the beginning of the pandemic, you had to deal with all the nonsense, you had to deal with all the nonsense going on. Can you tell us a bit about how you first encountered that, what your reaction was, how you had to deal with that, and maybe go through your story for, let's say, our American audience that isn't as familiar with you?
Yeah. So I'll figure out how to make this like really short and brief, because really my story started in 2015 when my first son was born. I was a completely indoctrinated nurse. I believed everything I was taught, believed in childhood immunizations and all of it. When my first son was born in 2015, something I called like a divine intervention, I don't know, put it on my heart that I needed to look into what I was going to feed him, realizing that it was going to be the foundation that would support his development, every cell in his being, his mood, behavior, and everything. And I was kind of this cocky nurse. I was like, I work with kids, with babies. I already know what there is to, what to feed food, but sure, I'll look into it. And that was my first door. I say, we all enter at different ways, and I entered through the corruption of food and all the lies we were told. And I became so passionate about this information because I thought, well, here I am, a nurse. I thought I did a nutrition course and I didn't learn any of this. So if I don't know this, how are parents going to receive this information? So I enrolled at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition in 2016 to become a holistic nutritionist. And that's when all the light bulbs went off for me, because I realized health is so simple. Why don't I learn this as a nurse? Why aren't I, teaching this as a nurse? Why aren't we learning how to be healthy? And then that's when it was, well, they don't want us to be healthy. They want us to be sick so we can be controlled. Fast forward to when my second son was born in 2018. That's when I knew that immunizations were wrong. We said no to all of them. And at that point, I stopped my first son at 18 months. My second son, absolutely nothing. Started speaking out about this, was in trouble with my College of Nurses then in 2018, kind of wrapped up all the legalities in 2019. At that point, I wasn't ready to lose my license. So I said, sure, you're right, I'm wrong. Let's go on, I won't do it again. But I told them as I was leaving that meeting that if they ever mandate anything on my children, there's nothing that's gonna stop me from speaking out. I just didn't think it was gonna be so soon after. So then here we were in 2020. I knew it was a lie right from 2019 when they were talking about December in Wuhan, because they were talking about this flu and already knew, the flu viruses, it's not really a thing. So I started speaking out boldly, but really what I was trying to do was promote health and remove the fear, because all we were hearing from our health authorities was, don't do this, stay away from them, put on the mask, sanitize, like lock in your home, stay in your bubble, don't see anyone. And I wanted to give people tools to remove the fear of like, this is how you boost your immune system. This is how you can stay healthy. If you do get sick, this is things that you can do. I didn't realize by doing that, I was stepping into a whole, world of a dissenting voice that was going to be vilified and attacked. And so I spoke at I organized a rally in my hometown, November of 2020. And that's when the media took hold of me. I was labeled this reckless, dangerous nurse putting premature babies in danger. And my reputation and character was destroyed. I was placed under investigation by my College of Nurses again and suspended indefinitely. And at this point, I found another nurse in Toronto speaking out. We got together. We met some American nurses speaking out, and we spoke in Washington, D.C. on a health and freedom stage in January 6th. Me being a naive Canadian, didn't realize what was going on with the political atmosphere of what January 6th is. So when we flew home, we were deemed domestic terrorists. We had the RCMP show up at our house to understand our involvement in the rioting and storming of the Capitol. I have 4 universities, nursing schools that I know of to this day that are still teaching what not to do. Don't do what Kristen Nagle did, which is storm and riot the Capitol. So at that point, we were suspended from our, not suspended, sorry, immediately terminated with cause from our jobs. This is before the mandates came out. And we had a choice of, do we keep going? What do we do? We've lost everything at this point. And we formed Canadian Frontline Nurses and we kept going. So that's kind of the big long backstory, but it all has a place of how I got to where I am now.
So you unknowingly walked into the middle of a war, essentially.
Yes. Yes. And unknowingly, that's like the best way to put it.
So in 2018, you already were familiar with all of this, not, you know, the fact that viruses are, let's say, not proven to be what they are.
Yes. Yes.
So you already knew this in 2018, and as it comes around and they're talking about the flu and blah blah blah, you're ready to go.
Yes. Yeah, because I knew that the next thing they wanted to do was mandate injections on adults. I didn't know how they were going to do that. So when I saw them talking and stirring up this fear in Wuhan, I was like, oh, that's how they're going to bring this in on adults.
It was such an effective media campaign, propaganda campaign. It's incredible, really. Like this needs to be studied as a propaganda, you know, event, because what it did to people and creating this mass psychosis is absolutely absurd. But so for your kids, when you decide, your second child, when you decided not to vaccinate, what was the reaction, or what are the laws, let's say, in Canada in terms of that? Are there laws that mandate children being vaccinated and them going to school? You need them to have vaccines, if you will?
No, I've been having this conversation with some Americans actually, and I find it really interesting that I guess some states it actually is mandatory, like by law, which I just find just so unbelievable. No, they put the fear in you and threaten you like it is mandated, but it's not. So right now, they're trying to suspend at least 18,000 children from an Ontario region for not having up-to-date immunizations. So this is, you know, showing that parents are waking up to this, that, you know, there's more, that we're not, you know, continuing. I think that was the beauty of what COVID did, was they put this doubt into people's mind. And they're like, okay, well, if I don't trust this, what is everything else that I've been taught? So thankfully, I homeschool. Once 2020 came, I was like, they are just not being part of that system. So I haven't had to deal with that, thank goodness. But it is not mandated. They try to threaten you, make it seem like it is. If you have birth in the hospital, they threaten, you know, a doctor or CAS, but it's all threats. So you have to be really strong in your knowledge and your conviction and stand firm against all of that.
So, you know, what's your understanding then of the way this was phased in? Because, you know, this is a really long-term form of conditioning that seems to have been applied on the public mind, right? You go way back into assumptions that were implemented about viruses and viral theory. And then that stretches into, you know, this growing list of immunizations, and that the list of immunizations that children are supposed to get is now a huge and continuously growing list of vaccines. And that all builds up. So you have that as the foundation. And then this whole COVID narrative launches, but it is really reliant upon decades, generations of conditioning. Like, what do you see as the driving force behind all of that? I mean, is that all intentionally done, or is some of that just sort of mistakes by people making the wrong assumptions? How do you sort out the way that we got through that long process of being conditioned so far from what's true?
Yeah, I think originally at the core, there was intention behind it. So if we get into how medical institutions were formed, well, you have Louis Pasteur that, you know, formed germ theory. And how did he form that on? Oh, well, people are having bloody stool. What are they drinking? Okay, milk. What's in the milk? Oh, listeria bacteria. Oh my gosh, it must be from listeria. Therefore, we need to like pasteurize everything and get rid of all the bacteria, because bacteria is what's causing these bloody stools. But what they never looked at was, well, how are the cows being treated? They were being treated horrendously. They were being confined, no sunlight, no outdoors. They were being fed cardboard within their hay. And so what the listeria was doing was actually cleaning up the toxicity that was in the milk, in, you know, that was found, that comes out of our bodies, you know, like We are detoxing everything all the time through our bodies, and the bacteria isn't there to affect us. The bacteria is there to help us and clean things up. So you have Louis Pasteur that's now founded germ theory. Everything is bad. Pasteurize this, kill this. And then you have the Rockefellers that stepped in. They're like, whoa, germs are bad. Well, we have all this petroleum, left over from all our big oil companies. Petroleum can kill germs. Let's make these medications out of petrochemicals. Petroleum, make petrochemicals to kill the germs. And let's make sure that the only people that study medicine go to our institutions. So, John Hopkins, all these major institutions that the Rockefellers started. And that's the only place you can learn to practice medicine. They coined the term quackery. So anybody that was working with plants, natural remedies, working with the earth, knowing our bodies, they started a whole attack on them that they were quacks, didn't know anything, and shuffled everyone into their propaganda institutions. And that's all it is. It's big pharma institutions. So that was the intent of where it started. I don't believe people going in there have that intention. I know that as myself, going into nursing, that was not my intent, was to learn propaganda. I went into nursing to help people, to be, a part of this side where I could make a difference in someone's lives. And I know that for many nurses, that's what we go into. Doctors, we're just going in to help and not realizing that we're entering just a propaganda machine institution where we're just regurgitating how to continue filling petrochemicals for symptoms, not getting to the root cause, not actually doing healing. So I think there's kind of like two waves in that. Yes, it started in intent. I don't think that's where the majority of people are now, but that definitely was the intention of how we got here. And in the basis of all of that was fear, especially getting on parents in their most vulnerable state, because as parents, like, we want the best for our children. We want them to be healthy. We never want anything bad to happen to them. So they preyed on parents' insecurities, their lack of knowledge, their lack of being in tune with our intuition, because again, that has been all programmed out of us, because trust the experts, go to us. We know better than you. This is what we studied. And they preyed on parents' lack of knowledge and fear, and just pushing all this stuff all the time. And I know I'm on a rant, but I'm going to end this with something that I just brushed up information on yesterday. I just ran a webinar and Q&A on vaccines, and I was talking about Zika virus. Like, this is not new. It's like every year there's something. And working in the hospital, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, every year we were dealing with something new. And Zika, someone even messaged me not too long ago. They're like, is it safe to go to Costa Rica? Because I'm thinking of, maybe getting pregnant, but Zika. And I was like, that is not a thing. And interesting enough, where it started was in Brazil, where they upped the amplification, the frequency and duration of ultrasounds on pregnant women. And then all of a sudden, these babies were being born with tiny heads. But instead of looking at what, all these women experienced, was this longer duration, higher amplitude and higher frequency of ultrasounds, it was, oh my gosh, Zika must have been a virus causing this, instead of looking at, again, the root cause. And yeah, so I found that very fascinating of where Zika stemmed from. Mm-hmm.
That rant all you want, please. That was a that was a perfect summary, actually, of the origin of it. And you're right. Doctors today, I don't think that they are, obviously there's doctors that have malintent, and there are, drug pushers that are pushing oxy and whatnot, and that's horrible. But most doctors are well-meaning people, and it's just the indoctrination is so deep that the people writing the textbooks believe it so much. So they never actually question the paradigm, which that's the paradigm that it's functioning under. So there is a place in modern medicine for allopathic medicine, and emergency surgery, any kind of emergency care, for the most part.
Absolutely.
Allopathic medicine has its place, but when it comes to preventative healthcare, it's almost backwards. It's almost them causing the diseases, and there's not these 10,000 diseases, right? I'm just adding on to what you were saying, right? But we could probably talk about this for a long time, but the idea that illness is one bacteria, one disease, one cause, one disease is ridiculous. And so to go back to your bacteria and listeria, bacteria doesn't, from what I understand, does not feed on healthy human tissue. Bacteria consumes dead, decaying, dying tissue, and also toxins. So this idea that bacteria causes illness is completely unfounded, from what I understand. I've done a certain amount of research on it, and that's my conclusion. But like you said, the pharmaceutical industry, which became the pharmaceutical industry through the Rockefellers, they understood that being healthy, if being healthy and getting sick has to do with nutrition and having exercise, the remedy to that is eating better and exercising. That's not a very lucrative alternative, right? But when you have a million diseases and you can have a different medicine for each one, that becomes very lucrative. So just to touch on, so measles is another one that measles and smallpox. I saw a video that you made explaining how measles is a natural phenomenon for children. Can you, because I have a certain idea about how measles actually helps the immunity of children. Can you kind of go into that a bit if you have some more clarification for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two different, I'm not really absolute on like it's this way or this way, but I love to take information and kind of pull it together and see what feels right. So if you look at the German New Medicine side of things, and I love talking about German New Medicine, I think it's a fascinating topic. They'll talk about measles as a separation conflict. Anything to do with our skin, any type of rash, and where it ends up on which side, if it's generalized, it's a separation to do with, maternal, paternal, either trying to get away from something or something that was taken from you. And so the German New Medicine will say that it is a separation conflict, and there's many variabilities of what that separation means. And so that is one way of looking at measles. The other way, which that kind of resonates a bit with me, but
separation of what?
It could be anything, like a child being separated from a parent, a child being, a teacher at school is, off sick for a week. It could be a favorite toy that was taken away or something like that. A pet passed away.
So it's almost a psychological thing.
It's all like psychological, yeah. So that's like the things being removed, or it could be something that you want to be separated from, that you don't want either in your realm, you don't want near you, don't want on you, and so you want to separate from something. So the rash is once that conflict has been resolved, because the skin is creating new tissue, it's proliferating, it's building up kind of armor to protect you from this conflict that it feels is in your realm, and it's doing all these things to protect you from it. And then when it's resolved, it's like, okay, we don't need this extra layer, we don't need all this extra skin tissue, we don't need this anymore. So we're gonna, heal all this extra skin that's now been proliferated, and it kind of shows up as a rash, it scabs, and then it heals over. Is kind of so that's the one take of it. And I'm just on the surface of German New Medicine. There's so many other people that are just way more in depth, but I love looking into it. The other idea is that it's a detox system. And so children have to go through different phases of life. It's a rite of passage that children have to go through. It boosts their immune system. It allows them to become more resilient adults. It makes sure that they are less susceptible to cancers, asthmas, other not life-threatening, well, could be other diseases in throughout their adult life.
Allergies and asthma and stuff.
Allergies,
there's very good research
stuff
for that, right? Like it's
yes,
very strong research.
Yeah, so allergies and then also if you look at Rudolf Steiner, he says it's going through, I believe, the water body. So he believes there's 4 phases that children have to enter, and measles, I believe, is the water body that you have to go through. It's physical, air, water, and mineral. So a bunch of different things, but at the realm of all of that, the basis is it's necessary. It's a benign childhood illness. It's our body doing what it does, which is protecting us, healing us, upgrading us, detoxing, leveling up, whatever that means. And it's not anything to be feared. And I think once the vaccine was put in place, this fear programming has had parents second guessing themselves, doubting themselves, not knowing what to do. I was talking with some parents the other day. They're like, well, what if my child gets a rash? What if I need to go to the emergency? I was like, well, what will they do there for a rash? How will they treat a rash differently than what you will do? So these things just take time. They take rest. They're uncomfortable. And the beauty with being uncomfortable as well, because we never want our children to be in discomfort, but it shows them, because life is hard, life is full of challenges, ups and downs. It shows them in this moment as children that this sucks. This is a hard thing to go through. This is very uncomfortable, but I did it. My body can do it. My body can overcome this. I trust my body. I know I can get through hard things now. I know I'm going to be okay. And the other beauty of that is with the parent caregiver, you have bonded with that child. You have sat with them. You have cared for them. You have loved them. You have helped them through the discomfort. So now they have this trust in you that you will be there for them to help them get through these hard times that are inevitable to get, happen in life. And I think we get mixed up as well, that we think that we're not supposed to experience hard things, that vaccines, that medicine, that all this stuff is supposed to keep us free of any discomfort. And that's a big problem in society, is everything that we do is trying to numb us at every level, whether it's a medication for pain, whether, you look at birth and the epidural, Netflix, alcohol, whatever we do, we are trying to numb our existence. And that is completely wrong. What we're supposed to do, we're supposed to feel the depths of the discomfort and the pain, so we can feel the highs of the excitement and the celebrations and everything in between. And that's what creates a resilient, strong adult, is being able to move between those perspectives.
Okay, so I've got to grab onto a few things there, because I think there's a lot of moving parts for people to understand in terms of the new path forward that's being laid out for parents, for families, like for children. So we're an unschooling, life learning family. We've been sort of on that path since the beginning for our children. And so there's a lot there, I think, that should be highlighted. For example, the notion that children have natural rites of passage, that they go through, and that these rites of passage are better supported by, I would say, the homeschooling model, or the model in which the parents are deeply involved in the education, because then the parents are present along those rites of passage. Whereas children who have been, since the early days of daycare, separated from their families and left to go through these crucial rites of passage, are then in more vulnerable positions. And it makes me wonder if, the increase in illness that seems to come for school children, because I know this from relatives whose children are in school, that there's a lot more struggle with their kids getting sick because they're in the public schooling system. And I wonder how much of that is children isolated from their parents during these normal and natural rites of passage that are actually deeply integrated into the immune response, as well as their psychological development. So in your experience moving into the homeschooling model, do you feel now that the psychological and immunological implications in the homeschooling model then address the child's development on all these different levels? Like, is that also where this is going? Is it then true, according to some of, Steiner's work and German New Medicine, then, that being present with your children during those formative years has, implications in immunity that people are possibly not considering?
Absolutely. And if you think about, and I apologize to all the viewers, I don't know what the background noise is like. This was the quietest spot I could find. And it's, monkeys, jungle, everything behind me. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. When you speak, actually, we don't really hear it.
Yeah, it cuts out the rest when you talk.
It's good.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. And this has been another attack on the family unit, right? Like it's the whole feminist movement, get the woman out of the home, the nurturer, the healer, the caregiver, get her out of the home into the workforce, need to be all these equal rights. Then it's like, okay, well, what do we do with these children? Well, we need to send them off to indoctrination camps. So then they can start being robots and walk in line with, the status quo of, what society's creating, this path for us to walk on. But it definitely interferes with that relationship of trust. So who do they trust? Do they trust these teachers that they're with? Do they trust their parents? Do they trust this authority figure? And I think it creates a lot of confusion of, well, who do I go to? And who do I trust? Who do I lean on? And everyone is kind of in a different space at a different time, and there's not anything consistent in a child's life. And then they miss that bonding from the parent caregiver, from the mother, the nurturer, healer, and all these things that we used to be able to have in the home. And the mother used to be equipped with the knowledge and wisdom, with plant medicine and herbs and trust and time, and make the onion and honey stew to sip on, put potatoes on your feet, onion on the ear, whatever it was, right? We had all these natural remedies that we have gone so far away from because we no longer trust ourselves because it's been conditioned. I would go on these, when I was speaking out publicly at protests, I brought it back to conception. We have given up our responsibility at conception. Why then? Well, because as the mother, you see that you've conceived, you go to your dating ultrasound right away at 6 weeks because you need to be told that, you know, you're pregnant, that, you know, there's a baby in there. Then you go to your next ultrasound, make sure everything's okay. And you continue going on to these OB appointments every week. Is everything okay? Is my belly growing? Is the baby growing? What is happening in there? You have no longer any trust over your body. That connection within your, before your baby is gone. You are seeking external validation and you have given up all responsibility throughout all of your pregnancy. Then when you go through labor, you're placed on your back, you are put in complete submission, hooked up to an IV, so you're chained to where you are. And then you have doctors and nurses telling you how and when to push and telling you exactly what to do. So again, you're not even feeling your body in that moment. Then you have epidurals where you're literally not feeling anything. Baby comes out, put on a table, injected immediately with man-made synthetic, because why? Well, baby is not born perfectly. Baby is flawed. We need man to fix baby and give back to mom. And then what happens after that? Immediate, you can't leave the hospital until you show that you have your pediatrician first appointment. And then you go to your pediatrician, your well baby visit, and then same thing. Is my baby growing? Is my baby eating enough? Is everything okay? And what happens in those visits? You need this synthetic poison for your child to survive. Okay, because I don't know if they are healthy or not. And then that's the cycle. That's how the child grows up. They repeat, you know, rinse, cycle, repeat, and they go on. So it needs to stop. It's a whole generational warfare. And I'm seeing more and more since COVID where this is stopping, where the fear to go in the hospital to birth babies was so immense. People were then, well, what do I do? I guess I need to learn how to have a baby at home. More home births were happening, less well baby visits, people seeking natural remedies, people wanting this knowledge, coming more into themselves, creating community to rely on. So honestly, as hard and devastating as the last 4 years were, I see so much blessing and good and getting us back to the root of where we need to be and coming back into that nurturer, healer, caregiver role. And I was so blessed. My baby girl screaming with my husband in the background. She's coming up to a year, but I call her my redemption birth. As a former NICU nurse who once thought home birth should be illegal, I was like, honestly, the 180s I have done in my life, I feel if there's hope for me, and I'm this bold now speaking out, there's hope for anybody. But she was my out of system, I call it a wild pregnancy birth at home. And it was the hardest, most amazing thing I have ever done, to the point where now I'm running a birth conference called Reclaiming Birth. We're in our second year because this information needs to get out to all parents, because with my first two sons, they were born in the hospital. And once I learned that there was another way, I felt robbed of an experience. And after giving birth to my daughter and reclaiming that power, because now it's mine, I trusted my body throughout all pregnancy, going through that, trusting her in the process. When she was born, I looked at her and I said, we did it. Like, knowing she was part of that journey and we did it together. And now I trust my body, I trust her. And it created this whole new confidence that I didn't even know existed in me. So I thought I was, you know, pretty good on this path, but going through birth the way I did, I was like, oh no, this is where that generational gap needs to end.
It's where it starts.
So it seems
really
like,
birth.
you know, the war on the family then, and the war on, you know, health and medical sovereignty, they're so deeply integrated then, because, you know, it seems like the family biome is really where this all begins. And the roots of that family biome are in the mother's sense of embodiment, you know, and her ability to move into pregnancy with that sense of trust and embodiment. And so, I mean, that seems to be where immunity, you know, it begins, if we're looking at it from that perspective, the way that the mom uses her body to connect with that child in the process and the rite of passage of birth. I mean, that seems to me like that's going to span into a whole lifetime of health and well-being if it's addressed correctly at those roots, which means that, you know, really, it's that the war on health freedom and the war on the family, they really are one and the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of say, rule the womb, you rule the world. Like that's this attack on the womb, and that's creation, that's life, that's where it all comes from. And so if you attack the womb right from the start, well, there you go, you got lifelong customers. And think of going back to Brazil. I think they're at an 80 to 90% C-section rate. Like they just believe, they go in, oh, I'm going to book my C-section, but you're missing not even just the microbiome of going through the vaginal canal and like everything that happens with, lining the baby's gut, the microbiome.
Yeah.
But it's the hormones. There's this amazing gift of hormones that are so necessary throughout the entire birth experience, from the very onset to the end. And one particular moment is called the catecholamine surge. And that is right before the baby is about to be born. And it's this mom is in this, you call it the luminality stage. She's kind of, up here, allowing her body to do whatever is necessary. And then this surge of adrenaline kicks in and calls mom back. Get back into your body, come present, because this baby is on its way and you need to be awake and ready. And usually in that moment, and this happened to me too, you go into this fear and this panic, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like, what is happening? Like, I need to go to the hospital. But it's just because that surge of stress just went right through your body to prepare you for the birth of your baby. But that same hormone release is happening for that baby. That adrenaline release is happening for the baby to wake baby up, because it's like, okay, you're going through this journey as well. You need to work, you need to turn and twist in order to move your way through the pelvis and make your way out as well. And so baby gets this surge of adrenaline, which helps baby breathe. And then they both get this surge of oxytocin, both of them, that creates this intense bonding experience like nothing else. It would be the most flood of oxytocin you'll ever experience in your life. And so it creates this deep bond. And a lot of this is being missed with inductions, with synthetic Pitocin, with C-sections. And there used to be a study, and I don't know the study. It's from my mentor in the birth world, Billy Harrigan. She had mentioned that kids in school, they used to be able to tell the difference between kids that had a C-section and kids that did not, because of this catecholamine surge is so important for what they go through. But now so many have C-sections and so many are having synthetic births and, with induction and Pitocin, that can't tell the difference anymore. But there was a point where it was noticeable.
Well, so can you actually talk to, so there's, what you're saying is that there's a child comes out a lot, let's say, healthier or with a stronger immune system if they go through the actual natural birth process, and the connection between mother and child is a lot stronger, or can be a lot stronger, let's say. Can you actually talk to what what are the effects that having a C-section, if it's an emergency, I assume should be done, or is it under, right? Or it's not under any circumstance it shouldn't be done. But then also, well, so, okay, that's one thing. But so yeah, can you talk to a bit what that changes for a child, or what the studies have shown that if you do get a C-section rather than a natural birth, and the epidural, what that can do?
Yeah, well, I can even talk from my first experience with my first son. I was induced, had the synthetic Pitocin, had the epidural. Thank goodness I didn't have a C-section, but I had all the interventions lined up that would have put me on the conveyor belt to have one. But our postpartum
Are you saying those things actually cause you to have a C-section? Is that what?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yes, they call the labor funnel. Everything, and I'm speaking from experience as an NICU nurse. Like, I've seen it all happen, and this is like I once believed in it until the veil was lifted, and once I saw the harms we were creating the problems, then saving them from the problems we created, and then it was, thank goodness you're in the hospital. But those things wouldn't have happened if you were not in the hospital.
It seems like that's what they do for everything, right? Every single disease that they deal with, they cause a problem with something, and then they have a remedy, and then you're a patient for life. But sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's okay. And so with my first son, I had all the interventions in place, and I didn't know any different. I thought that's just what birth was. Thank goodness for hospitals. And our postpartum recovery was really hard. I had baby blues, not quite a full-on postpartum depression, but definitely was very sad. Our breastfeeding journey was incredibly difficult. And this is, a lot of effects with the epidural, the lack of hormones, the bonding. So it was like horrendous experience with breastfeeding, to the point, like, I just felt like this obligation. Every time I heard him cry, I would start crying because I didn't want to go in and feed him. And then the mom guilt would come in because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how do I not want to nourish my crying child? And then it was this whole situation that lasted months. And then when I look back and learned, it was because of all the interventions that were in place. And one of the things that people don't know, and sorry, I'm going to throw this out, is the hats in the hospitals. So
Hex?
The hats.
Hacks?
Hats, toques.
Oh, hat. Sorry. Oh, a little bit of a Canadian accent came out there, I think.
Yeah. So when a baby is born, right away, skin to skin, and then a hat goes on. So this is something I learned over the last few years, which I found was very interesting, that a hat is not only not necessary, it's actually harmful. So when a baby is born, you want that baby on your chest, that skin to skin, and you want that first smell of baby. So what that does is when baby comes, mom takes a smell of baby's head. It sends signals to, your amygdala, pituitary gland, sends out another rush of these oxytocin hormones, but it imprints on that baby, where that mom will always remember her baby by the smell. What it also does is send in another wave of hormones to prevent postpartum hemorrhage from happening. And so here we are in the hospital. We think, heat is lost from baby's head, so we must put a hat on, keep the baby warm. But what is that first smell that mom has? It's either hospital or synthetic material, and it sends, this message to the amygdala. It gets confused, and it's not sending the appropriate hormones to mom to create that bonding, to also prevent postpartum hemorrhage from happening as well. There's like all these things. Like we were made so perfectly. We are so perfectly divinely designed, and we always think that man knows better. We think we know better than our perfect divine design. We think we can be more efficient. We think we can, speed things up, do something to improve it, when we are just pure perfection as it is. And everything in our body is intent and on purpose and not by mistake. And it's beautiful when you allow it all to unfold as it should.
It's very sad how they've taken this thing that should be so beautiful, so nurturing, so natural, and turned it into this mechanical, thing, scientific thing. It's a lot of things come back to scientism, like it goes to the death of God and, Nietzsche and stuff. But we're truly in a science cult, if you will. Everything that we do, it seems like it goes back to this idea that science is the new religion, and science is the new word of God, and scientists are the priests and whatnot. And it's very encouraging. Like you said, there was 18,000 kids in Ontario that their parents chose not to vaccinate. It's incredible. Quick comment: during the past couple of years, the pandemic, I can't say it without quotations, the past couple of years, they ridiculed informing yourself, right? Like if you were doing your own research, they ridiculed that. But if you just do a little bit of research and you come at it with an open mind, it's one thing will surprise you, and then there's just it is a rabbit hole, but it's like everything is distorted, right? Once you start, and Tucker Carlson has said this, and it's kind of stuck with me. It's like once you say one truth and you're opposed, or there's reproaches and challenges, and you're called names or whatnot. Once you say one truth and you stick to it, a lot of these other things open up, and you start actually questioning everything. And once you get down to it, it's all nonsense, and it's hurting us. Our food is toxic and whatnot. But it's very so. One thing that people would say to natural births is modern medicine has decreased child mortality and decreased the mothers dying giving birth. What would you say to that? Because I know a lot of these ideas like vaccines cured polio, it's nonsense. But what would you say to that one?
There's actually studies out now and books that shows that hospitals have a higher incidences of maternal mortality and death. So hospitals actually have greater mortality. which,
today, not
yeah, today.
historically, right?
Then home birth.
Historically, a quick comment on it is that, nutrition and sanitation or whatnot was not always what we have today. Our standard of living was a lot
Correct.
lower.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect of it, but
yeah. So this attack has been going, this is the longest one, birth. So it goes back like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's very interesting that this is the, we'll say, you'll go through food, childhood immunizations, but birth is the last one to go because the fear has been so deeply programmed in us from generations to generations that it's a really hard one to unlearn and to take back that trust. But the truth is the only two certainties in life is life and death. Situations happen that are devastating in hospital, not in hospital. And I'm trying to figure out how to say this. There's a lot of things back in the past, like you said, like water, sanitation, safety, all these things. But if you look at the history of when they actually brought in medical models to birth, the incidences with that were still higher. They still created more disease. There was OBs were, didn't know they had to wash their hands. So they were going from cadavers into pregnant women to the next woman to the next and creating, I might pronounce this wrong and I apologize, like puerperal fever, and women were dying significantly. Then you had the twilight sleep, where women were being like knocked out, like roofied, and able to give birth to the point like they would be, their body would be conscious of what's happening. So they'd have to be strapped down to the table, but they would wake up and not remember. Horrific things have happened throughout history in the birth world. Surprisingly enough, Ricki Lake did an amazing documentary on this called The Business of Being Born. And she dove into the history of all of this. The documentary is from 2008, but it's still like very well done and very relevant even today. So there's been all these things that have happened in the birth world with the medical personnel that have not really improved anything. They just try to tell us that they have. They use different models or different situations of areas where, it war torn, where, not a lot of food, not a lot of sanitation. And they take stats from those places and then say, but see, the hospital's better. So they don't show you a true picture of what a healthy pregnancy and undisturbed physiological home birth looks like. So the models and the numbers are very deceptive. Mm-hmm.
So have you looked into any of the work of Joseph Chilton Pearce and some of what he frames around birth and the disconnection between baby and mother?
No, but it sounds like that's something I will have to look into.
Okay, so I did a 6-part docuseries on a lot of this. So it's really exciting to hear you say, because I made this docuseries called Superorganism. And the focus of it is on the idea that the family unit is a superorganism, and that this is one of the cultural ideals we should be uplifting, because the family unit, it performs the functions of a superorganism on many levels. It does this biologically speaking, it does this psychologically speaking, even spiritually speaking. The process that's occurring from conception between the mother, the father, and the child is actually one of legacy. That legacy begins from conception. And one of the ways that legacy is formed primarily begins with the mother and the child. So for example, the state of the mother's heart during pregnancy and the field being emitted by the mother's heart is regulated according to the states of consciousness that she's in. So if the mother's in perpetual states of gratitude or meditation, the actual field being emitted by the mother's heart is creating feedback into the child's heart. And this later will affect the child's emotional resilience, their capacity for self-regulation, emotional regulation. And this relationship seems to play on, of course, in the skin-to-skin phase and in breastfeeding. All of that ties into forms of legacy, your child's capacity to navigate life, and non-linguistic forms of wisdom are being passed from mother to child during pregnancy, and then, of course, in those early years. And one of the things that Joseph Chilton Pearce highlights is that this relationship between the mother and the emotional state she's in and her heart's coherence that it's generating according to those emotional states, that after the child is born, this also plays into parts of the brain that connect the child with the sense of the earth itself. Their feeling of being connected to the actual planet Earth is represented by brain structures that form only if there is this mother-child bond during these early years. And so some of what his research shows is that once we started separating mother and child during these early years, he points to a 50-year period in the United States where breastfeeding almost disappeared in, I think it was like 95 or 98% of the population. Breastfeeding was just gone because of all this propaganda and, a lot of the feminist, like liberation, Marxist ideology that had infiltrated that space. So do you have any sense of that in terms of how the child is being alienated, not just from the mother and not just from the family, but even from their sense of connection to the earth and the society at large through these forms of trauma that have been normalized?
Yes. So actually, as you're saying that, I was getting kind of chills because I have a personal experience I will share, because I fully believe that everything that you just said. I might not know the man's work, but I totally, resonate with everything you said and believe all of that. So in 2021, our group, Canadian Frontline Nurses, organized a widespread hospital-wide protest across Canada. It was in support of the healthcare workers that were being forced to get their injection, so jab or job. And so we organized this national hospital protest. It was beautiful, it was peaceful, it was amazing, but the media twisted it around in such an evil way that I have never experienced so much hate in my life. All the things that we had done, all the protests, all the speaking out, it was that event that created the most vitriol and just the language, it was a very dark phase, and our email box got inundated with like 3,000 hate mail. I was the one opening them, reading them, and trying to delete and see them, the messages coming forward. And just people thought we had blood on our hands. We were murderers. Just to recap why, the media all across Canada said we did three things. We interfered with ambulance access, we assaulted healthcare workers, and we stopped cancer treatments from happening. Those were the three things the media came up with that we did. All false, but that's what people believed. I was newly pregnant at the time, and that hate continued for quite a bit, and ended up miscarrying at 11 weeks. And I fully have believed, and even then, that it was from the environment, from the atmosphere, from my heart, from what I was feeling, from everything that was going on in that moment. Whether it's true or not, that is what I feel. Was this baby was thinking, this is not the time or the place for me to come into this world. So I don't know if that personal experience does kind of answer your question, but I've always felt that that moment was related to the amount of hate and darkness that was around us at that time.
Well, I mean, this is part of the philosophy that we're really, I think, trying to bring back, is the idea of personal experience being a primary form of wisdom. This idea that empiricism should be a foundational philosophy for us, that our best access to truth is through direct experience with the body, with the human body, and not so much with like the mind as it becomes disassociated from bodily experiences. And I think this is a big part of the trick they've pulled on everyone, which is this idea of taking outsourced, expertise and using that to deny local embodied experiential expertise. And that switch has been really, really damaging on so many levels. One of the things that I found in my research was that they've done something similar to fathers, and the way they've painted the role of the father within the family unit seems to disassociate the father with all the magic that's occurring physiologically and biologically. So, one of the studies that I found that was so profound was that men who are present with the woman during gestation, like really truly devoted. So that means they're actually physically around the woman during the period of the pregnancy. The man's body starts to be reprogrammed by the sort of biofield of the woman. There's huge alterations in the man's mood and his experience of day-to-day life. And one of the things that seems to happen is that there's a rise in prolactin in the father because he's present during the pregnancy. And what these studies found was that after the birth, the fathers who had this rise in prolactin from being devoted and present during the pregnancy, their bodies were more responsive to the cries of their babies because of that experience. So it seems like this idea of the family superorganism, again, to me, is that if the fathers are there, they get tied into all this biological magic as well, so that their relationship with the child is deepened through the mother's body before the child is even born.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed a huge difference between the two hospital births where my husband was more of a bystander and just there watching, waiting, for whatever, versus the birth of our daughter where he was fully involved. I couldn't have gone through that labor without him. He was, putting counter pressure on my back the entire time, was with me the entire time, and just absolutely a part of it and involved in every single aspect of it. He was not a bystander. He was a participant in every shape of the way. And it was beautiful to witness. It was amazing, even that connection that helped through that birth and that labor, that pregnancy. And then even afterwards, him being there. And because we were at home, once, time had passed and we cut the cord after 2 hours, which was beautiful. Baby was placed on his chest and he was in a comfortable bed, able to have the skin to skin, which did not happen at all at the hospital. You got to hold a wrapped up baby, but not the same experience of, being in a comfortable bed with, our baby skin to skin and just present. And it was beautiful. So just absolutely night and day. And I fully believe everything you're saying too, that I love how you're calling the family unit the superorganism. And I believe that's what it is. And I see the attack completely on the family. We had an event a couple of weeks ago where we had 2 breastfeeding babies. One was mine and my boys, they were kind of away, but we realized that just there's some language still where it was mentioned maybe babies were a distraction, babies shouldn't have been there, that this shouldn't have happened, a man was a distraction, and that it was a time for an escape. And that word really that stuck with me, because I thought, an escape. Why would we want to escape our family? Why do we want to escape? Why would a breastfeeding baby be a distraction? Why, is a man that is being, this amazing father figure helping, with the baby and everything, seen as, a distraction and out of place? And I just realized the importance, me and my girlfriend realized this, that organized this, that we need to do something for the family, because there's been so much attack, so much language, this idea that we need an escape, from our family. We need to run away. I was like, I don't need an escape. I need moments like, right now being able to talk to you guys, or like, moments to get some work done. Absolutely. I want some time for me. Yes. But I don't need an escape ever. We've been all traveling together 24/7 since November 1st. Like there's been, no breaks, and I still don't feel like I need one. And I think we need to change the idea of like, I love the superorganism, and bring that back as the family unit, create more of a connection, create places where breastfeeding babies are just accepted and seen. Children are part of these circles. Children are, did you ever read the Celestine prophecy? That has been coming up in my mind the last little bit. The 8th insight. And it was about the children and about keeping them involved and making sure, there's always an adult with the child, and having conversations with the child, not speaking over them to the adults, but including them. And I think we've done such a great job in the sarcastic way of excluding our children in every aspect of our lives. In every part, it's been compartmentalized. Children are okay here, not okay here. Children go over here, but not in this space. And I'm really feeling this call to start bringing it all back together and making it very strong and accepted. And it just makes sense. The superorganism. I love that. That's exactly what it is. And I mean, you see that in nature all the time. Every time I'm like, if you have a problem, go sit outside nature long enough. It'll answer all your problems. Like, look how the monkeys are interacting with each other, their family units. Like, look how the fungi is breaking down that log that is used as nourishment to grow this next tree. Like, every solution is in nature, and we are nature. And I think we've gone so far from that and disconnected in every aspect of our lives that it's time to bring it back together and create these superorganisms.
I'll just touch on one more thing really quickly before we move on, that, related to your experience with the father being more involved, is one of the other studies that really impacted me, that I looked at for creating this docuseries, was that the moment when fathers have that first skin to skin with their babies, they found that there was a temporary 33% drop of testosterone for the men in that moment, which sort of changed their emotional landscape and opened them up to a deeper bond with the baby. So it's like that the fallout, again, there's all these, the cascading effect is either really, really detrimental or really, really positive, as you seem to have found with your work, that when there's this warfare from conception onward, there's the cascading effect of all the interventions that, end up affecting you for months. But then the reverse is, true as well, that the full integrated family unit, the father there for that moment, he has that drop in testosterone, his bond with his child deepens in that moment. And who knows how long that stretches into their relationship in their life, just from those formative years. So I think it's super important. I just wanted to point that other study out for you and for the listeners. But I think we should bring.
Hey, what about me? Okay.
Not for you.
Gotcha.
Well, I think it'd be cool now to sort of bring this all back around to one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on the show, because there's this huge attack on you. There's all this money that you're being told that you owe, and like all this insanity. And so now there's been a campaign to have your back and to give you the support that you need to stand up against all these fines against you, and to really set a precedent to help protect Canadians in the future. So maybe we should touch on some of that before we move further.
I know, I'm sorry. You got me talking about some of my favorite topics, and I just go on rants and tangents.
I'm gonna bring you back to them after, if you don't mind.
Okay. No problem.
Please tell us what's this nonsense going on.
Yes, well, because I continued speaking out, as I had mentioned, I received 11 summons. So not fines, but they were summons to go to court for going against the Reopening Act of Ontario. Some of them were for speaking at protests. A couple of them were for organizing protests. And the fines range from anywhere from $10,000 up to $100,000. So thankfully, 7 of them got either stayed or withdrawn or just taken away.
Is that recent with the new judgment on the emergencies act?
That one's coming up. That one went through, but the 4 that have gone through, one I got fined $12,500 for attending indoor church on Easter Sunday, April 25th of 2021. So that is being appealed. I'm still waiting the appeal decision on that. Then the other trial, which is the one you're speaking of, I got fined for organizing the rally in my hometown, and I was fined $20,000 with a victim surcharge of $5,000, so $25,000 for organizing said rally, because we had over 100 people attending. And then just recently, on February 29th, I was just found guilty again for speaking at another rally with more than 10 people outside at this rally. So they have seen the Give, Send, Go support, and I go back March 21st for sentencing, and they want a significant amount. So I don't know what's going to happen with that one, but I will find out March 21st what the added amount is. Just keep adding.
They haven't given you the number. Okay, they see that you're getting support, and they're trying to add. Are you kidding?
So they're going to try to use the Give, Send, Go against you?
Yes.
That's insanity. Like, that's like
so
we've reached it's really ridiculous. We've reached a very bad point.
That's
in Canada.
Peak evil. That's crazy.
Yeah. And prior to that, it's not a protesting one, but as Canadian frontline nurses for the hospital rallies I had mentioned, we were suing Canadian Nurses Association and Together News Media, a media company out in Vancouver, BC, for slander and libel. I mean, the one article started off as like, quack, 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 these nurses. I can just imagine how the rest of the article went. And we lost, because there's this anti-SLAPP motion that should be used for people like ourselves, but in this world, they twisted it around. And it's supposed to prevent bigger companies from suing smaller companies and stopping public discussion, is what the SLAPP is. But they silenced us. Like, anyways, we had to pay the defendant $105,000 for bringing them to court. Yes. It's
Or-
my little boy. My guy was doing something I guess was not supposed to. um, like mother, like son. Yes. So that's where kind of all this sits now. So March 21st, I'll find out the next amount.
So you had to pay that amount already?
Yeah, it's split between two of us.
And and that was because you sued them for slander, which
And we
clearly
lost.
it seems like
Yeah.
clearly seems like at face value it's slander, right?
Yes.
They're calling you, they're calling you stupid, and it's an opinion piece. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, our court system in Canada as well, and in a lot of places in the States as well, has been so corrupted, and these judges and lawyers are so indoctrinated as well into this world that is semi-communist.
Yes, absolutely. No, and it's interesting because I was so naive in 2020, even early 21. I was like, as soon as we get all this into the courts, like they'll have to look at the evidence and then they'll see and we'll win. And but once I entered into the court systems, I realized very quickly, oh, this is not how we're going to win anything. This is not the way that we're going to see the victory that we were thinking of. And I've quickly realized that the victory that we want to see is not going to be in the courts or, blast all over mainstream. We're seeing little bits and pieces of that now, the truth coming out, but I don't feel we're ever going to get this mass apology of you were right, we were wrong. I don't see that happening. How I see the victory is how I'm trying to live my life is leading by example. And every time you try and break me down, I'm just going to keep rising higher and higher and keep moving up. And I think that's all we can do as society is they want to keep us down. And we just have to keep rising up. And that's where the victory comes in, is leading by example in our everyday moments and in lives. And that's just what I believe. I also have a strong foundation in faith. And I just know that God's in control. And ultimately, it's his victory. He's already won. And he'll use everything to glorify his name for good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like, that we can all see that the COVID narrative woke people up en masse, right? It had that effect incredibly. And so now, the way that I like to look at this is that mechanism of tyranny being turned into awakening is something that we need to take hold of, that our capacity to transmute tyranny into greater awareness and sovereignty is something that we need to now consciously grab onto. It was kind of like a natural phenomenon that I think occurred from the COVID narrative. So many people woke up to the greater system of oppression that we live within. But now that we're past a certain point, it seems like there's this individual responsibility to take hold of that transmutation process and to say, hey, I see that tyranny. I'm going to transmute this into living from a point of sovereignty and free thinking and family values and all these things. I really appreciate the way that you're able to transmute that, because I think a lot of people, they get caught in, sort of doom scrolling, and they get black-pilled, and they get into this sense of hopelessness because they see, my God, our foundational institutions, our courts, are captured by forms of ideological warfare, and it seems very dangerous. And yet I think it's exactly the kind of pressure that we need to move into a new phase of society that really is going to be far more superior than what we've been living in this entire time, in this entire facade.
Well, absolutely, because I don't think many of us would have been on this trajectory or stopped at what we're doing with our lives. I just found out that they're closing, so I'm taking you guys on a walk. So,
Awesome.
that I don't think I don't know if I would have changed my path or what I was doing or homeschool or any of this stuff. Like, I was trying to leave nursing for years, and it just was not happening. And so I'm thankful that my world crashed and forced me to pick a different path, because it's the one I should have been living or aiming towards before. But I was stuck on that conveyor belt of what society has created for us and what we should do. And, this is, the path that you take, do these steps. So I think it's amazing to see what it has done, and that it has pushed people to their limits. And there's so much good out there. Like, there's so much beauty happening. And I think we do get caught in the doom scroll. But if we realize, if we focus on all the good that individuals are doing or the beauty that are around us, then that's what you're going to bring into your life, and that's what you're going to focus. And And there is a lot of good, like there's so many companies creating parallel societies, like Barter It with, the barter pay. Like, I just love it. There's, so many alternative healing and clinics and things coming up. The homeschool world is blown up. Like, there's so many good things happening that I think that's where we need to start turning our attention to. Forget the doom scroll. That's where they want us to be left. They want us to be down there with that low vibration, that low frequency, in that darkness of despair and paralyzation. It's like, well, why continue on? I had people tell me, I can't believe you're bringing another baby into this world. And it's like, excuse me, this world is amazing, and we need more warriors and leaders to continue,
Right.
paving the way. So I
We're
think
just going to take it back. That's the message.
Exactly.
We're taking it back and creating, like, screw all this corrupt nonsense. We're going to create I love that you said parallel society. I mean, we need to create all the way to a court system. We need to recognize these institutions as illegitimate. Our court systems are not objective anymore. But so the economy, the parallel economy is building, starts with crypto. We're partnering. So Breakaway USA, the idea is to break away from these corrupt institutions. And we're partnering with some parallel economy companies. We got this Freedom Water that's awesome. This one says bottled with liberal tears. I
love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love this one. The wellness company, you got these alternative healthcare companies coming along that you don't have to go to a doctor. You can have these telemedicine, and you have so it's awesome to see what stuff is happening. But so, yeah, parallel society, we need to build something separate. I don't know how we can build this, how do we break away from a court system, right? We have a police state in Canada, right? The government has all the power. But I guess, so there's some stuff to be done from the inside, with, let's say, Pierre Poilievre. Hopefully he does what he says when he comes in. It's hard to know, but yeah. A comment that I wanted to add at some point. So, the idea of a biofield, which you mentioned, Simon, that's the one that, so the superorganism stood out to you and the biofield stood out to me, and both of them. But this idea that energy is so important in health and so important in human connection, and that has been completely stripped away from medicine, right? And it goes back to the Rockefellers and the Flexner report and them destroying homeopathy. Do you have some, and then EMFs as well? I don't know what your thoughts are on electromagnetic frequencies, but we are electromagnetic, entities, and these electromagnetic frequencies that are all around us, in these wireless headphones. I doubt you use wireless headphones. I'm sure you know about those. But so homeopathy, did you come into contact with homeopathy and how that worked? Because homeopathy was huge in America, from what I understand.
Yeah. I'm not as well versed on homeopathy, but I love it. I think it's amazing. They take, like, the essence of, the plant or whatever it is. And I had to move out by the road and use that. So it's like a bee sting, for example. I have that with my kids, and it's called Apis. And they use kind of like was it the venom, like the sting, and they use that in the homeopathy. I'm not one to talk about homeopathy. I just, how it works and all of that. I just know they take the essence.
Like cures like. That's what I understand.
Yes.
Like cures like, and they dilute something like the venom. From what I understood, there was more homeopathic. I mean, there were more homeopathic hospitals in America than there were allopathic hospitals in America. But the propaganda machine and quackery and calling it, pseudoscience all along the way. It's crazy to see how powerful the media was even then. But it was this very structured and organized attack on any kind of alternative healthcare just to push drugs, right? It's crazy when you actually see that, and it sucks because a lot of doctors are probably well-meaning, but it's like the pharmaceutical industry made the modern allopathic medicine textbooks, right? Like they're the ones using doctors as opposed to doctors then creating a demand for medicines. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I will be honest. Where I stepped out, it's getting a little bit harder to hear.
Okay. No worries.
I'm gonna have to zoom up on my face, but I think just so I was trying to hear just the attack on medicine and alternative healing and all of that. That is what I was catching on. there's a big talk of like, this is maybe not related, but hopefully it ties in. Ozone therapy. Ozone therapy has been used a lot lately. It's huge success. Like I have a girlfriend that has a clinic and it's doing amazing things where now Health Canada has completely banned the therapy. So they would, bring in some of the equipment from the States and now you can't even get it over the border. So Health Canada has put a complete attack on ozone therapy, on the equipment, even buying it, bringing it into your home. They have tried to just, ban the entire practice from happening.
It makes me think of raw milk, actually. Raw milk is illegal in Canada. It's illegal to sell raw milk in Canada. That's absolutely insane. And we don't need to go into the pasteurization, the effects of pasteurized milk and how it's almost, they take all the good stuff out of the milk by pasteurizing it. It's really insane. But Simon, did you have any comments? I have a couple questions, but
well, it might just be worth briefly noting the attack on natural health products. There's a big fight going on right now with NHPs. The regulations that they're now trying to put on natural health product companies that are crippling them and empowering the pharmaceutical industry. We're now at a phase where they're trying to destroy the natural health product industry. And I don't know how many, Canadians really see what's coming down the pipeline there. And I know that it's not fully integrated yet, but I think there's a big call to action right now to protect the natural health product industry before it gets completely castrated by the Canadian government and the subsequent success of the pharmaceutical industry.
Kristen, I see you're wandering around. We can let you go.
I'm trying to find a quiet spot, but there's nowhere to go. It's like road there, and then I tried to hide in the bathroom, and I'm sorry.
All right, we can let you go, and we can.
You have a comment about the attack on natural products, if you can hear me.
Yeah,
I think this is also an opportunity for people to start realizing the powers from within, that they have everything they already need within themselves. Because I think a lot with alternative medicine is getting very similar to allopathic, where it's like you need this supplement, this supplement, this supplement, you need this treatment, you need this treatment. And really, we already have everything we need within us. We just need time. Food is medicine, and herbs. There's everything around us in plant medicine. It grows in your backyard. There's all these things that can be found in abundance all around us. But again, it's another lost wisdom, another lost knowledge that we don't have. So my hope is that with this attack on natural products, that people will start maybe trusting themselves more, getting to know their body, maybe looking into German new medicine, because German new medicine has everything to do within ourselves, our emotions, our surroundings, our environment, and not look for the quick fix that is found in a pill that I know still a lot of alternative companies push out, that this supplement, this will help this, when it is an overall lifestyle approach. It is your mindset, it is your environment, it is every aspect of your life is either medicine and healing or it's taking away. So I hope that this is another attack that just shows people to come back again more inward and learn the skills that we once knew as healers and nurturers and the plant medicines and everything that is gifted around us. So that is my take on the attack on health, natural supplements. I just hope it pushes us more into a natural way, even just like raw garlic, thyme, rosemary, like these things that we have in our kitchen cupboards. Pineapple, the bromelain for respiratory illnesses, drink some pineapple juice, ginger, turmeric, like we have all these things around us that are better in the raw form. We just have to remember how to use them and learn how to use them. So that's my hope with the attack on natural medicine.
Interesting. So a silver lining. Find a silver. I mean, you got to find a silver lining in everything for sure. The one thing that I'm worried about is that I know, and I don't know about Canada as much. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear us? Can you hear me a little bit? A little bit. Okay. Well, I'll say it anyways. It's just that our soil is degrading all over the world, and a lot of our food doesn't have the same nutrition that it used to. A lot of it is toxic. A lot of it has, pesticides, herbicides, has glyphosate in it. So ultimately we do need to be, we need to have certain nutrients, and that's where I see supplements coming into play, is that if we don't have access to good, healthy food, we need to find ways to supplement to a certain extent, right? Obviously, don't completely go supplements and don't eat. But that's something that I'm trying to explore more on soil and how our topsoil is degrading all over the world, and we can't really get our food doesn't have as much nutrition as it used to.
It's interesting because I used to believe all that too and say all that, and now I'm not so sure.
Okay.
But
Okay. So
I don't know. I used to be an associate of USANA supplement, and and I believed in going to nutrition school. We learned all about soil, the lack of nutrients in food. I mean, there used to be vitamin A in potatoes, and now there's not. But now I'm wondering if we've still forgotten of just like being out in nature, like connecting with the earth, all the things around us. Vitamin D, like from the sun, we take for granted. It just even herbs. Like I forage a lot now. Like now I'm out in my backyard and I'm doing a lot of foraging. So, I mean, that's like right from the soil in my backyard, which is good. And there herbs and plants, and whether it's in teas or you're eating them. Like I love in Canada, the blue spruce season, going off of my blue spruce and picking the tips and eating those. Like, I don't know. Now I'm wondering, like, are we just not aware or well-versed enough in these wild plants or things that are around us? And maybe that's a knowledge that we need to learn again. So I don't know. I'm not disagreeing or agreeing. I'm just saying it's something that I kind of go back and forth in now.
It's good because that'll make me look at a different aspect, because this is what I have come across and it makes sense to me. But maybe because fasting does a number for us, right? So like the human body can produce a lot of things if it's put in certain circumstances, certain situations. So maybe we don't need that as much. Sorry.
No, it's okay. They just came to go. I was hiding in spots, but now they're actually like closing the gate. So I do have to walk past this like busy road now. I'm sorry that.
No, it's awesome.
I was trying to make it work today with the family and this and just.
Yeah, you're doing
Thank you so
it.
much for your time.
No, you're making it work. It's excellent.
We got you on the go. We've never done this before, so it's awesome. But yeah, so we can wrap up and we can talk another time. I don't know if
I'd love to talk another time. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I'll just say that I would love to send you my docuseries Superorganism. We have really crazy overlaps in our research, so I'd love to do that. But before we go, then, can you let people know where to follow you and support you moving forward?
Yeah, you can find me on KristenNagle.ca. So I've just started kind of my own website. I have a newsletter. I have a couple little things in my shop about natural remedies and herbs and things like that. And I'm going to get my vaccine Q&A up there because it's a different approach than I think most people in Q&As, because I talk about, the history of smallpox and virus mania and all this stuff. So it's a different take on vaccines. So you'll find that up there. And then Instagram, I'm probably most active there at Kristen_Nagle. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, and we'll put up the Give Send Go as well. We've put it up before, but
yes,
it's insane what they're doing to you, and
I know
it's about you, but it's also like if they could do this to you, they could do this to anybody, right? We gotta fight back against these lunatics.
No,
And
absolutely, because it's they're trying to scare people to never speak out again.
Exactly,
and it's an attack on free speech. So it's for everyone, and I'll have to touch base when I find out what my next sentencing amount will be.
Kristen, thank you so much for coming on with us. Really appreciate what you're doing and your wisdom as well. You have a wealth of knowledge that I'd like to explore a little further with. So, but thank you for everything you do. Thanks for coming on.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Sorry for the last little bit, but this was a really fun conversation, and it was really great to connect with you both.
Yeah, we'll look forward to talking again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Take care, Kristen.